Please bear with me while I start the live stream. We're about halfway there. Okay. I call this meeting to order. Behind my right shoulder, you will see our American flag. Please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which
for
it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first order of business is to administer the oath of allegiance to the superintendent and our newly elected board members. For the sake of webcams, I'll ask everyone to please remain seated if you're taking your oath this evening. Dr. Tice, would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And that I will faithfully discharge.
and that I will faithfully discharge,
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
The duties of the Office of Superintendent.
the duties of the Office of Superintendent
Of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Thank you very much. Mr. Catalino, please raise your right hand. If you could unmute yourself, please. Thank you very much. If you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And that I will faithfully discharge.
and that I will faithfully discharge,
According to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability,
The duties of the Office of Board of Education member.
to the duties of the Office of the Board of Education member
Of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you're next. Sorry, I couldn't find you on my screen for a second. If you could please unmute.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And that I will faithfully discharge.
and that I will faithfully discharge,
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
The duties of the Office of Board of Education member.
the duties of the Office of Board of Education member
Of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Okay. Ms. Fumarola, please. If you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution of the United States of America.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
And the Constitution of the State of New York.
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
And that I will faithfully discharge.
and that I will faithfully discharge,
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
The duties of the Office of Board of Education member.
the duties of the Office of Board of Education member
The Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
for the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Okay, the next order of business is the nomination and election of the President of the Board of Education. Is there a nomination for the position of President of the Board of Education?
Madam Clerk, I would like to, with pleasure, nominate Ms. Marissa Mims for board president.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. I need a motion to close nominations and cast a vote for Marissa Joy Mims as President of the Board of Education. Do I have that motion?
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
And a second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. And if you could raise your hands, that would be helpful.
Aye.
Aye.
Can you keep your hands raised, please? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. I will now turn the meeting over to President Mims.
Thank you, and thank all of you very much. I appreciate it. The next item of business is the nomination election of the board vice president. Is there a nomination for the office of board vice president?
I would like to nominate Ms. Sharon Linders.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any additional nominations for the office of board vice president? Is there a motion to close nominations for the office of board vice president? Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second? Thank you, Daryl. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Now we need to do a vote for the election of Sherry Linders as board vice president. All those in favor, please state aye. Raising your hand, please. Aye. Thank you. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Congratulations, Sherry.
Thank you all.
Okay. I will give the oath of allegiance to President Mims first, and then Ms. Lindars second. President Mims, if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
the duties of the office of President of the Board of Education
the duties of the office of President of the Board of Education
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sherry, if you could unmute, please. Thank you. And repeat after me. Please wait. Oh, you got your right hand up. Thank you. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
duties of the office of Vice President of Board of Education
the duties of the office of the Vice President of the Board of Education
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District.
Very much. Do you both affirm that you are currently in the state of New York?
I affirm.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the availability of the safety plan. This is just a note to let everyone know that the 2020-21 safety plan is available for review. We will have a public hearing and adoption of the safety plan at a future meeting. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Rebecca, and a second from Sherry. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining?
Did we not have discussion as part of this?
I'm sorry, did I miss that? Okay. Did you have discussion for that, Dan?
Yeah, so can we pull 4.11, please?
RFP for legal services.
And Marissa,
Mhm.
I'd like to pull 4.02, please. I had a question.
Okay. So my error, I will go back and ask if there is a motion to approve the amended agenda item with item 4.02 and item 4.11, now moving to become items 10.01 and 10.02. Is there a motion to approve the revised agenda?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Rebecca. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone for public comment, Sarah?
We do not.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to approve the amended consent agenda for this evening? Thank you, Dan. Second from Rebecca. All those in favor, please state aye, raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next, we are moving on to item 5.01, appointments. Is there a motion that the Board of Education make the following appointments as presented?
President Mims, can we table this until the end of the agenda? The appointment of legal services is included here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on item 5.02, then designations.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the following designations as presented? Thank you, Kelly. Second from Daryl. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Next on the agenda, 5.03, authorizations. Is there a motion that the Board of Education make the following authorizations as presented? Thank you, Daryl. Second from Sherry. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Moving on to 6.01, past President's Report. So we have a board meeting on July 20th now. The agenda for that meeting, the proposed agenda for that meeting is that we'll be discussing the reopening plans. As everyone is aware, the state did release information today, guidance today for school districts in regards to reopening. And it's my understanding they're going to release some more information later in the week. So on the 20th, we'll be able to discuss with Dr. Tice sort of the preliminary plans in regards to reopening school, as much information as he'll be able to provide us at that time. We will also have an executive session to discuss superintendent contract, and we will do board and district goals at that the 20th. We have a retreat scheduled for the end of the month, July 27th. We will further discuss that draft plan for reopening schools, and we will also do board development work related to the goals that we develop on the 20th. If anyone else has any, or if anyone has anything specific that they would like on the agenda, please let me know, and I will work that into the agenda for the retreat. I also would, we've gotten some emails today from people who are interested parties in the community with medical expertise. And I know that in our community, we're really fortunate to have a lot of people with that particular level of expertise. And I just spoke to Dr. Tice briefly before the meeting because it just occurred to me that it may be a good idea for the board to put together an ad hoc medical advisory committee, which of course would include our own nurses, but just members from the community who could help by reviewing those draft plans and working with Dr. Tice and the administration to give that medical background. So I wanted to get the board's thoughts on perhaps convening that medical ad hoc committee, numbers and details to be determined at a later date. But right now I'm just looking for if the board is agreeable to having that ad hoc committee. Of course, we would work with Dr. Tice to make sure of the parameters of the committee.
I think it's an excellent idea.
I've been wondering about that as well. And I was just wondering on timing, if plans are due to be submitted by July 31st, how quickly we're going to move.
Tomorrow, probably. we'd have to get moving on that tomorrow to get the to get that together in time.
Is there thought as to how we would kind of make this public so other medical professionals would be aware?
I think it would be a good idea to work with the administration to get some sort of a description of what would be needed and the time commitment, and post that on our social media and our webpage. And I think probably that there are people in the administrators who may know specific individuals in the community who could be particularly helpful, and to reach out to those individuals just to spread the word, and then share that link from the website with other people in the community.
We're going to have a pretty tight turnaround. They released some information today. They're looking at releasing more information Wednesday. The portal opens up Friday. We were looking at a review board or a task force in order to move quickly on this. Certainly, we're going to have to put in a closure, an open plan, as well as a hybrid plan, as we talked at length today. But certainly, it's going to be open to the public to review at that point. So we anticipated the additional guidance coming from the state, in particular with the opening of the portal on Friday, to know exactly what they're looking for. As you recall, the district had to submit continuity learning plans with the school closure in March, as well as childcare and food service. So they are looking for specific fill in the blanks, or at least they did this past March. So we will be very interested to see what those fill in the blanks are. Certainly an ad hoc committee or any advice we get will encompass an array of opinions. As we know, we're not going to please everybody. Some people want schools to stay closed, others want them to open. So we know that, but again, we're looking at what the governor and the state ed department talked about today during the Board of Regents meeting that a lot of us listened in on.
I mean, it just strikes me that, and I'm sure this is all in your capable hands, but in addition to some of the pediatric experts, we want physicians that are working with adults and also public health experts. So those are three pieces I would just hope that we look at. And then there's probably other sectors I'm not thinking of.
So I'll just.
Infectious diseases, perhaps?
Dan?
Let me just chime in on sectors, because Rebecca, yes, you hit three of the key ones, but the other one that has kept coming up through this closure in the spring, and we'll revisit it, I'm sure, in the fall, is mental health, especially child mental health experts.
Mm-hmm.
That was heavily in the slides that were released today as well.
All right, we'll begin work on that tomorrow and get back to the board. The other thing that I thought would be helpful as part of this process is some sort of a walkthrough of the reopening plan. And we'll have it on paper. And I'm not suggesting that we bring back the students for this, but a building specific walkthrough of what a typical day would look like for students in class. I think it would be helpful for stakeholders, board members, et cetera. And I know it will be difficult because of social distancing, but to whatever extent we could do this or have people involved in just walking through what a day is going to look like with, once, of course, the administration is able to determine what those days are going to look like. But I think that physical walkthrough would be a real important component of it. Again, keeping in mind social distancing needs of everyone.
I would just add on to that, because this is something that I found personally helpful in my own professional life, a video or YouTube of the different buildings of what they look like if they've been retrofit. So there's no surprises for students. So it could be the principal and teachers walking through the buildings and then sharing that with the community so they can see what their schools are going to look like. And I mean, I think a lot of it's going to be preparation for our kids. Especially
for the kindergartners who are just arriving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But everything's going to look different likely. Mm-hmm. So the more we can preview that, I think that'll be a great asset. And we have the technology expertise here to do that.
Sure, that's a good idea.
Okay. Lastly, I've had conversations with everybody now in regards to board committees. I have one more discussion I need to have, and then I will send out that list to the board tomorrow or later this evening if I can have that discussion. Depends on how long this meeting goes, but I will definitely have that out to the board by first thing tomorrow morning. And that is all that I have for my report, past president report. Moving on to Superintendent's Report. Dr. Tice?
Certainly. Thank you, President Mims. Under internal operations, I think it would be important, as I indicated in backup material, that we engender a conversation. We had indicated that this would be a Zoom meeting for the reorg, but we were silent on whether that would continue or we would elect to meet in person for future meetings over the summer and going into the fall now that we're in phase 4. So I had that as a tickler, and at the end of my report, I'd be happy to facilitate a discussion in that regard. Under community relations, as you know, we have distributed the community survey about the reopening of school. It has generated around 2,000 responses already, and tomorrow is its closure. With respect to the earlier survey on the last academic year's remote learning efforts, I shared that with you in backup information. It's certainly out to the administrators, and we're reviewing that feedback as well as feedback from the faculty to help inform our planning for the year ahead. Under administration, a number of Fayetteville-Manlius officials participated in a regional meeting with representatives from the other OCM BOCES component districts in the afternoon of Wednesday, July 8th, in an effort to plan for the reopening of school. Conversations took place around the topics of elementary, middle, and high school procedures in conjunction with discussions in the area of maintenance and operations, including cleaning and disinfecting, transportation, and social emotional learning. The results of this brainstorming session will be shared with the OCM BOCES component districts, certainly part of this week's discussion with the chiefs, and as all districts seek to see if they can collaborate together on their reopening plans by the July 31st deadline. Under non-instructional operations, the Office of the State Comptroller has wrapped up their field work in Fayetteville-Manlius and will provide an update before the end of the week. It's anticipated that we will receive the draft report sometime in September and the final report released in November. Speaking of auditors, our external auditors arrive on campus this week for some preliminary work in closing out the books from the prior fiscal year. Also, Mr. Furlong, in the area of COVID-19, he provided some updates for us. Maintenance and custodial, there's been training going on the Victory sprayer disinfectants, also the installation of polycarbonate clear shields for certain workstations and desks, in particular in the office area, training of employees on cleaning and disinfecting protocols, and the purchase of MERV 13 HVAC air filters. In purchasing, we're looking at personal protective equipment, including face shields, masks, hand sanitizer, and disinfectant wipes. In the area of transportation, continued use of the Victory sprayer system, the training of employees, and use of better air filters on our buses that have air conditioning. In the area of food service and working with the business office, moving towards a cashless purchasing option, no-touch purchasing, more grab-and-go options, less buffet salad bar type setups as far as the open food areas. In the area of personnel, we continue to address staffing and vacancies. Mr. Gordon and his team have done a wonderful job organizing committees with building administrators and faculty to prepare for the return of the students. So we have been proceeding as if we are reopening in September and filling the vacancies accordingly. In the area of students, as indicated in the backup information, I regret to inform you that Cazenovia College has let us know that our swimming teams will no longer be permitted to use their indoor pool. This is consistent with other institutions of higher education who have asked their secondary school teams to move out. So I know our athletic director is working with our swimming coach in order to find alternate training sites for our student athletes. In other news, I'm pleased to report that Mr. Furlong, Dr. Coughlin, Laurel Chiesa, Josh Becker reviewed obsolescence plan for our computer hardware additions for the upcoming year, so that we're able to purchase additional Chromebooks for all FM students, so they'll have their own device without having to share at home or to clean between usages. The opportunity cost in this area will have to defer some purchases and regarding our obsolescence plan in order to afford the additional Chromebooks. In the area of instruction, Dr. Coughlin reports that our summer online academic review is off and running last week. I know that Mary and Laurel Chiesa had check-ins with Edmentum representatives regarding Study Island and Exact Path products. Mary indicates that we have a wonderful team of teachers who are managing the SOAR program this summer. Dr. Coughlin also reports that faculty in service has begun in earnest with teachers working on micro lessons that can be used with synchronous instruction in the event that we move to online or a hybrid model if there's a resurgence in the virus. And as reported earlier, Dr. Coughlin canvassed the faculty in order to complement our own parent-guardian survey regarding online learning. These two surveys are certainly helping to drive our summer professional development hours, and Dr. Coughlin shared the courses with you in a prior Thursday letter. And then last but not least, strategic planning and construction are pleased to report that our school district took delivery of the modular suite that will serve as a swing space for our students at the Wellwood project. Over the course of the next few weeks, the modular classroom suite will be assembled and prepared for the arrival of the students. Because of the extended school closure period, we're also ahead of schedule on our asbestos abatement work in the older part of the building, including work that was originally scheduled for next summer. And finally, the site work continues at Wellwood on the bus loop and renovations for the new enlarged visitor parking lot. Demolition and the old work in the old art rooms and instrumental music rooms has been completed. Foundations for the new addition are being readied by the contractors. That ends my report, President Mims.
Thank you, Dr. Tice. Are there any questions from the board for Dr. Tice?
Me too. Hi, thank you for that, Craig. I just want to follow up on, an email that we had last week on the survey that was done of the faculty and whether those are results that are going to be shared with us or not, so that we can take that fully into consideration, and in addition to the feedback from the community members.
In terms of, as I reported, we had talked about the survey that I had shared the feedback from the parent guardians. You were talking about the faculty input?
Yes. Yes.
I know Dr. Coughlin works with the teachers on that in terms of assembling the summer courses in that regard. And so I know that's already been used for planning those summer in-service hours. I don't know if Mary, you wanted to add anything to that conversation?
The professional development team and I surveyed the faculty before school ended. We asked about the challenges and successes of remote learning, and that gave us information to help craft professional development for the summer and curriculum development projects that are going on this summer. That survey did not query the teachers about return to school plans specifically. So,
Mary, could you provide a summary for the board? Not specifically, we don't, I think, need to read through X amount of hundreds of surveys, but if there is some short summary that you could provide to the board, maybe with just different areas of concern or areas of strength and where those may be applied moving forward?
sure.
That would be helpful, I think.
I just think it's helpful, and the reason I'm asking is we saw from the community feedback what they perceived to be the successes and challenges. And I think for us in any decision making that's done, it would be helpful for us to know the same from the faculty side of the aisle on that. So I'm just looking to see what that looks like.
Great, thank you very much. Oops. Next on
Just one last quick thing. Dr. Tice, I know you had communicated out that graduation is taking place in staggered form on July 25th. I'm just curious, so we all know, is there any role that any of us are playing in that as normal or not? Just curious what that looks like in general terms.
Thanks for bringing that up, Dan, as a father of a senior.
As an
Hey,
uncle,
you can.
as an
find
uncle of
shift,
two,
it'll-
as an uncle of two graduates, I'd like to know that if I could.
Yes.
Well, certainly we're, as far as the board, I mean, this is a year unlike any other. So, you know, all our shifts are going to be from 8 in the morning, if not earlier, until 4 in the afternoon. It really stretches out over the course of the entire day, Saturday being the target, Sunday being the rain date. So there is no receiving line as we have in past years, again, because of social distancing. Dr. Kilmer issued a communique today that said they'll receive their diploma from him, certainly allowed to take their mask off as they get with family for a photo op, and we have a photographer present as well as they exit the stage. So there really is no, you know, in terms of honoring the social distancing requirements for New York State, there is no receiving line that the board has participated last year. Certainly, I would encourage all of you who are parents and relatives of others to attend at their time, but there is not going to be the formal, you know, presence on the stage, so to speak.
Dr. Tice, just in keeping with board tradition, is there any way to allow, because I know it was a highlight for me to hand my children their diploma, is there a way to still allow, if Mark wants to do that, that to take place? I think that, I mean, I realize we can't have the receiving line. That's obvious for social distancing, but just to allow that particular tradition to continue.
I'm sure we can work something out. I'll talk to Dr. Kilmer.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Dan.
Really?
Okay. Anything else for Dr. Tice?
Are we going to have that discussion now about future board meetings?
Zoom? Yeah, I kind of put that as a placeholder at the end. What is your feeling in terms of sticking with Zoom or moving back to in-person meetings, or just with the uncertainty of it all, stick with what's working?
I think
Before we begin the conversation, there has been an executive order extending virtual meetings through August 5 so far.
The order says that we have to do virtual meetings for a certain amount of time, or just allows us to continue doing it this way?
Allows you to continue.
Okay.
so.
All right.
I'll go ahead and say, as long as we can do something with social distancing, I'd recommend strongly we try to do something in person, because for me personally, I lose a lot of the body language. I lose a lot of the, you know, what I'm hearing from people. There's cutting in and out. The technology is not perfect. And I would really love the opportunity to get together again, if it could be in a reasonable setting with social distancing.
I mean, my concern about that is that I think indoors masks are still really, I guess, I don't know what it would look like, but if we had to meet and wear masks the whole meeting, then you lose all the facial gestures. So you might gain body language, but lose facial expression, which I find very, very frustrating with this. And then I guess the other thing I'd add is, do we want to think about consistency with how the rest of our district is meeting? So are we encouraging teachers to meet remotely? Are we encouraging administrative cabinet? I don't really know how that's been working, but I think some consistency on that front makes sense to me, and to sort of follow those protocols.
Look, I think that,
Summer,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Some are in person, some we're still using Zoom as far as the consistency. It depends on the meeting and the size of the group.
Is cabinet still meeting? Is cabinet meeting virtually, or is cabinet meeting in person?
Cabinets meeting virtually, yes.
I just my input on that is look, from a time perspective, these Zoom meetings are far easier, for me, and I suspect for most of you as well. And they become a more efficient use of time. The downside to it, or the counter to that, is really the obvious community thing. If we're talking about opening up our schools to hundreds of kids per day in our schools, teachers in our classrooms, there's a great irony or inconsistency to us saying, well, we can't get 12 of us together in a large room. So, you know, that concerns me.
I would agree with that.
Why don't we look at the retreat as sort of a dry run for how this might look? And I say the retreat because the retreat doesn't have to use technology to be broadcast. So that gives us some wiggle room as far as being placed even further apart. And I'm thinking the cafeteria, perhaps at Eagle Hill, which would allow us a lot of social distance. And we could try that to see what it is. And is, to Dan's point, it would be a good exercise to see what a day with a mask on, well, it wouldn't be a whole day. Our retreat will not be a whole day, I promise you. But what that would look like to have the mask on for a long period of time in a meeting. So we could, Sherry and I could work on some logistics for that and get those out to the board and see if that would work for the board. I see Sherry and then Sarah.
One thing that I do want to, a point that nobody brought up is that when we're dealing with the kids going back to school with COVID, they are not as high a risk category as people over 60 or over 65. And in this group, although we all look so young, I think some people are in a higher risk bracket. So we do have to keep that in mind that there may be some people who either have an underlying condition or are in a higher risk category, rather than when we're looking at all the kids.
Right, but my take from the American Pediatrics Association output was that it's the teachers we're concerned about and the custodians. So
yes,
while true, the kids aren't going to be perhaps as affected, it's the teachers that would be.
Yes.
Potentially. So I'd rather see us trying to do that, as Dan had said, to see if it works. And I think when we're sitting down, I would hope that we could take our mask off if we're 6 to 12 feet apart, what have you. Because we'll each have microphones. I'm sure we can hear each other very well. There shouldn't be any shouting, which would project, any potential virus further, but God forbid.
I just want to, don't forget about outdoor meetings too. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of pushing for that across different industries, and that may or may not be possible or practical for us, but we certainly have the weather temperatures for it for the next few months, and that is tenfold safer, or it's much, much safer, and possibly, I think, more likely to be able to do outside without masks on than being indoors without masks on.
And I would agree. However, every physician that I've spoke with have said minimize risk. And I know if we're looking at opening up school and we're trending that way, if we continue trending that way, you know, my comments right now may be a little different. Like what I may say right now may look differently in 4 weeks. But today, if you ask me about how I would feel comfortable meeting, it would only be outside and with a mask, because that is the only way you can minimize risk. And I only not worry about myself, but you know, I have 2 very elderly parents with underlying conditions that I am the primary caregiver currently. So I cannot risk that. Personally, I can't risk it. So if we were meeting indoors, I'm fine with the socially distanced, but I would not come to a meeting unless everyone was required to wear masks.
Sarah and then Kelly.
Sorry, good.
I just want the board to also consider public access to the meetings, whether it's YouTube or in person if the public joins, any mask requirements, and so forth.
So if we have the meeting in person, we have to allow the public to come in person, or are we still able to stream it? Because we're still under that executive order that gives us some leeway.
The executive order gives us leeway
Okay.
at present.
Kelly?
I guess I just want to just add my own thoughts to this. I agree. I was thinking the same thing to Dan's point that we are going to open the buildings and let kids and teachers in. However, to Sherry's and to Elena's points, I guess I feel like I know it's just a small number of us right now, but you know, I feel like if we continue to do the work over the summer, and then, you know, the decision by the state is to open schools, then I think I would feel more comfortable meeting as a board in person, because we're asking everybody else to do that. For now, I feel like I'm just trying to be cautious so that our numbers remain low. And, you know, certainly there are those of us on the board, if we don't have our own underlying conditions, to Elena's point, have people in our immediate families who might. So while this probably won't be able to last forever where we meet over Zoom, and maybe shouldn't, because we have staff and, you know, that won't be able to do the same, I would feel more comfortable remaining this way. However, if the decision or the consensus is to meet in person, I would strongly suggest that we wear masks, certainly if we're inside, even if we're social distance.
You know,
Jason and then Elena. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So Marissa, I think the only comment is that for us to meet inside in a room that they wouldn't have to clean, to have them clean a room just for us, I have no problem with us meeting together, but I think the point of us meeting outside is a really good idea, especially with weather being on our side in the summertime. There's got to be a covered space outside. I think we could meet as a group. I'm hesitant to make the district go and clean a building just for us to have a meeting, because I'm sure under the new protocols, there would be a lot of cleaning that would be involved after we left.
Thank you. And Elena.
Thank you, Jason. I did want to also touch on the cleaning. I know for ourselves, I know what we need to do corporately on a daily basis. On the hour, every hour is what we're doing. And it is extensive. But also, I just wanted to say that, you know, to my point earlier on, and Kelly touched it up as well, obviously, we will eventually, if school is continues to move in the direction of opening, then yes, we are going to be meeting together and we're going to follow all the proper protocols. However, currently still, even physicians, they're all doing telemedicine. Unless you've had a surgery and need a follow-up, I don't know of any physician that is doing a standard routine visit. They're all televisits.
I just had my annual physical right in the office.
So did I.
Shocked because
I have monthly meetings in person.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because everyone that I've talked to, they have not, and personally, we have not for any of our physicians within this household.
Yeah, maybe that's different for the Krause Health Group, but that's who I saw right here in Manlius.
Upstate as well.
Okay, so I've heard from, is there anyone who hasn't spoken, who wants to speak on this? Sarah, did you have something else you want to add in regards to? Okay. I I'm feeling the consensus of the board is some hesitance to have an in-person meeting. And that the majority of the board is still wishing to meet on Zoom. And that would include for the retreat on the 27th. And perhaps, as we look at our plan to reopen, looking to resume when school resumes in the fall under whatever guidance that we'll be opening schools under. So we'll follow the same protocols that we expect for our staff when schools do open, hopefully first week of September or second week of September. Sarah?
Just need to make sure we're in compliance with open meetings law. That's the one that's extended through August 5th. So if that
Okay,
order
if
is
that
not
changes, okay.
renewed,
Right.
at the next regular board meeting, which I believe is August 10. But I will keep an eye on that executive order, and I can certainly, make sure Dr. Tice and the board is aware of whatever updates come through on that.
What's interesting, it's extended to just about the same time when the governor is due to announce whether or not schools will actually reopen. So that probably isn't too coincidental. I don't believe in coincidence when it comes to the state. So why don't we look to that then, that guidance that we'll get on August 10th as far as schools reopening, and then follow along with our schools. I think there were good points raised about, I miss meeting in person. I was just thinking that today, how I wished I was driving over to Eagle Hill. So I really do miss the in-person meetings. Did anyone have anything to add on that? Daryl, you haven't spoken yet, and then I'll get you, Dan.
Not such a big addition, but I am grateful that all my young board colleagues are not as anxious, or no more anxious than I am, because I just think it's not a good time to get sloppy. I think it's New York State's doing so well. I hope we can stay out ahead of this, but we can't prevent people from coming into our state, obviously. But I am much more comfortable with the Zoom until the state says we have to meet together. I miss you all, but it's still safer for me. We have gone virtually nowhere. Well, I take that back. We went to church for the first time yesterday, but with all the Purelling everywhere. So thank you.
Dan, did you want to add something new?
So I just one follow-up to the part that Craig that you said, or maybe Bill can speak to it, is I'm just curious on where we're at as a district on acquisition of PPE and some of these other things that you've talked about, and where that stands is obviously we still have a lot of national shortages on it. And I just do want to remind both of you on that, if you're encountering any stumbling blocks, we do have people in this community that have connections, and those are connections that should be taken advantage of if needed, so that we would have everything that we would need by the time school opens.
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. Of late, we have not had any trouble with procuring what we need. But however, there are some specialty items that we continue to determine what we're going to be needing and placing orders on. To date, we haven't encountered any delivery times that would be beyond Labor Day. But that is a concern, that we can get everything we need in-house by the start of school. But I feel pretty confident that we're ahead of the game in terms of purchasing various items, including masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, the polycarbonate shields for people's desks, and that I feel pretty confident that we'll have everything here by the start of school.
Okay, thank you.
Are we limited in where we can purchase those items from? Considering these circumstances, are we able to look at sources that we may not have been able to before?
There are, I'm getting emails. I'm probably getting about 4 or 5 emails a day on, from different suppliers that have stock, as they say, on hand. Actually, the one company that we use quite a bit for instructional supplies, got an email from them today stating that they have masks available for different age groups. And the prices they have were very low, very competitive with what we've seen in other places in the market.
Okay. Any
And
additional?
Ms. Deneen's worked with Mr. Furlong in terms of masks that have the clear openings so that students who are dependent on reading lips and so forth are able to do so. So we've tried to take everything into consideration.
Okay. Any other questions for Craig?
You know, you all saw the per pupil cost in the onboard newspaper. I thought it was an underestimate. Did you all, it was what, a little less than $500 per student to follow through on all these protocols that we're going to have to do. A couple $1 million to begin with, so it's daunting.
So,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I just had one other question, and you may not likely even know the answer to this since we didn't know definitively or what was going to happen from the governor's office today, but in terms of faculty staffing, especially the classrooms, as Jeff peeks up. Yeah, hi Jeff, this is related to you. So obviously we have quite a number, presumably, of faculty who are in the very high risk category and may have grave personal concerns about returning to classrooms in the fall. So I'm just wondering what, if anything, is being done to get ahead of the curve on staffing those openings if we need to fill them, whether it's for half the year, full year, or how that works with being able to respect the needs of faculty that may just not medically be able or comfortable returning to school.
It's a great question. It's a little too soon to answer that because we don't know, again, which model we're going to be under. So we're probably going to have a time commitment at some point when we know what the model is. And then we're going to have to talk to our attorneys about what options they will and will not have to, whatever we do will be the same as any other district across the state. So we're going to have to look for some guidance on that. But obviously it would make a big difference if we started the year with all the students there with a hybrid, or if we're all online, it would probably change the equation of which teachers or which staff members were able to return or not.
We're meeting with union stewardship tomorrow.
Well, probably the reasons be different too. You mentioned medically fragile. There's also issues of childcare. So there's different reasons and there's different avenues that would have to be taken by the employee depending on what the rationale and reasoning was, and different documentation, et cetera. But we're obviously we're all going to be flying very quickly in August in a lot of different ways. That will be where I'll be flying very quickly.
Yeah, I'm just concerned on the end of if the numbers end up high, and as you said, everybody's going to be in the same boat. If everybody locally in the same boat is in all of a sudden a sudden need for new teachers on a temporary basis, then
it's a very good sign for people coming out of college with teaching degrees right now, because there will probably be a lot of sub opportunities for a semester or a year, as you mentioned, across the entire state. But there's a lot to unpack there, and so we'll move quickly and we'll get everything filled.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Dr. Tice?
I guess just to understand the timeline, I know we have to submit by July 31st. I know that early August is when Cuomo will come out with sort of the regional opportunities or the regional opening plans. Our plans that we submit will have all of the options, that the different models, and then when will we try to make a decision and let the public know by?
The governor has made it clear that he will make the decision based on the rationale he handed out today. So we will have to have all three parts to the model: remote, in-person, or hybrid. But the governor will make the decision the week of the August 1st to the 7th. He has obviously reserved that right at the state level and has not delegated it to individual school boards or superintendents.
So it'll be by region which model, or will it be one, it'll be by region? Which model will
It'll be by region as far as the opening. I mean, as far as the specifics, as you can imagine, there was a lot of detail work here that we're going to have to account, but at the same time, there are going to be some global common threads that the team talked about today during our district office administrative meeting. So there are some threads that we're looking at that hopefully will give us the flexibility and adaptability in the event we're open on September 7th and closed on September 14th. I mean, I say that facetiously, but we have to be able to adapt and move whether we're open or closed. So you're going to see some detail work, but you're also going to see some very simplistic answers to try to keep things common and adaptable. Again, as you could imagine, the more specificity you have, the more chances you have to be exclusionary, and we're going to try to build an inclusionary type model.
So we have no say in the matter when he says it's a go or under 5%. He will decide whether we are hybrid, open, or remote.
Agreed. He has that decision. Keep in mind, though, the less than 5%, as Mr. Furlong pointed out today, as the numbers guy, is a 14-day average, and that the closure will be when we get higher than 9%, and that's on a 7-day average. So even he wants to be quick to close, so to speak, and adaptable if a 7-day average suddenly shows a spike in the return of the virus. We, on the other hand, are going to have to build our plans that we have the doors open, like I said, after Labor Day, and then in the event we have to close them at the end of the first week, we don't want to be having children trade teachers and move around. That's just going to be more work, for the little ones and the teachers, everybody involved, and the parents. So it's something we're going to be looking at. Yes, the details, but also the common threads, as I said.
So we don't know yet if the state will give parents an option to keep their kids home, because I know that was in the survey.
That's a great question. Yeah, and we've seen that in other states, and that's one of the reasons we included it in our survey, is that we anticipate, even if he says that the buildings are open, we anticipate some pushback from some segment of the population in more of a defensive mode that are going to want to keep their children at home. So we anticipate that there might be that, not necessarily a hybrid option, but there might be some remote students within a class as well as some students in person. What that actual percentage will be is anybody's guess at this juncture.
Sorry, I'm monopolizing. I just have one more question. Do we have any inclination for those regions like ours that are in very good shape, and let's say they are in August? Do we have an inclination? Do we know anything about whether the state intends to try to go to a full reopening, or we just have no idea right now in the best case scenario parts of the state?
As the media reported today, when the guidance, the barometer was issued by the governor, all districts right now would be able to open under the current statistics. Now, whether those statistics hold, if they're just a summer, apparition, or if there is a resurgence of the virus as travel takes place in the summer, is anybody's guess. But right now, as the media reported, all districts across the state would be able to open with those current thresholds.
I guess that's the part I didn't understand when he said open. I thought that could still mean hybrid model. And so does anyone have other thought? I'm not unclear what that means.
What I'm hearing is that the governor will decide the first week of October if we're going to open, and then in
August.
what model, I'm sorry, of August, October, and then in what, and then in how we're open. So he may say the first week of August, we're opened and it will be a hybrid model, or you'll be able to have a hybrid model and a online or in person. So he's going to tell us if we're open and what models we may open under that first week of August.
That suggests that we might have a choice.
That's my understanding of how it It's not clear entirely to me, and I know they said they're going to release further guidance later on this week before everyone has to start submitting plans. Can we ask that question?
I will know more come Wednesday, and definitely I'll have an answer for you when the portal's released on Friday. So by the time our meeting rolls around a week from tonight, I can't promise you reams of paper of a thought out plan, but what I can promise you is knowing what the details are, what the portal's looking for. So it could be something, again, very simplistic and leaving the details to the individual district, or it could be more prescriptive than we've considered. And maybe it's a bar that is so high, it'll be difficult for FM or any district to reach. There's that theory out there too, that they'll be asking for a moonshot, and again, only having half a month to put it together. Maybe we're able to meet that, maybe we're not. So it's going to depend on what they're asking for.
I think it'll be important for the board as we think about questions prior to our meeting on the 20th to get those into Dr. Tice, because he may have to reach out to state ed to get specific answers. So if you, I would suggest getting those questions into Dr. Tice even that Thursday beforehand, because he would have to reach out to state ed and give them an opportunity to respond. And again, we'll get more information later this week, but I think the Thursday before our, I don't know what date that is, our meeting on the 20th, getting questions into Dr. Tice so he can get those questions answered by either legal counsel or state ed.
That's this Thursday for next Monday's meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wish me luck.
As much as you can find out for us, Dr. Tice.
I will endeavor.
Dr. Tice, has there been a lot of, or any additional guidance or any guidance about sports in general this upcoming school year? Was that, did I miss that in this initial release of information?
Nothing that we've heard other than that extracurriculars, and I don't know if that was as referenced by the Board of Regents this morning, also includes interscholastic sports, would have to involve social distancing. And as we've heard from the New York State New York State Public High School Athletic Association, and I've shared with you some of their communications, certainly there's a concern as to which sports will allow more social distancing than others in terms of contact sports. So there wasn't anything by name specifically mentioned today, but as you can imagine, every athletic director throughout the state is on the edge of their chair waiting, for that signal. But they did reference it today as extracurricular activities. Again, they did not extrapolate to interscholastic sports, but the mention was that there would have to be social distancing. So whether they were just talking about clubs or sports, I cannot tell you.
Has there been discussion about, or even the possibility with, and I guess I know all the districts would have to buy into this, of flipping some of the seasons so that some of the more socially distanced sports could take place in the fall, and then hopefully next spring we have better times, Dr. Tice? Or Dan, do you know something about that?
Yeah. So the New York State Public High School Athletic Association put out a really comprehensive document about just over a week ago, where they really tore apart every possible scenario, and from taking the lowest contact spring sports, moving them to the fall, and the high contact sports to the spring, to delaying all sports and running shorter seasons starting in January. They laid out, I think it was 6 totally different scenarios based on circumstances. They've dug deep into this. So it's obviously a question of which of those scenarios is going to happen. But I was really pleased to see how deeply they dug into considerations on a sport by sport basis. And I don't know where the role is of school advocacy on this, but I was a big fan of what they did, especially with the proposals to swap or push seasons instead of cancel seasons, because we've seen enough cancellations and what it's done to these kids, and ultimately, like every other extracurricular activity, athletics is an important part in the lives of many of our student athletes. And the more that we can do to help or advocate for the preservation of that, I think the better off all of our students would be.
Mhm.
The start and end times are obviously not customary to what we're used to and somewhat shorter in duration. And they're typically back-end loaded to the spring, more so than the early fall, keeping fingers crossed that there's a treatment, cure, or vaccine by that time. But sports that typically may not have been in competition with each other, for example, the football player that also played baseball may soon, have to pick one over the other. So Mr. Seidberg's right. They did kind of shuffle the deck a little bit. Some people are happy with that. Others, I think, upset because multi-sport athletes now will not necessarily be multi-sport athletes, especially if there are two teams or three, are during the same season.
I do think we got a bit of a forecast for that in the last 3 days when the Ivy League suspended all fall sports. Today, the Patriot League suspended all fall sports. Didn't cancel, suspended for hopes of rescheduling later. I would be surprised if that was not a forecast of a model that we'll see coming down the pike very shortly.
I agree with that.
And we've seen other college conferences just do conference only schedules, getting rid of the out of conference games. So everybody is in salvage mode right now.
Okay. All right. So if you, as you think of additional questions, let's get those in by Thursday if possible. So Dr. Tice has a chance to look into those responses for you. Next on the agenda, we have committee reports. Mr. Christofoli is no longer with us as audit chair. Last meeting was June 16th. Is there anything, the minutes are there for the board's review. Is there anything specific that anyone from the audit committee thinks should be highlighted from those minutes for the board?
Oh, probably it should be mentioned that, as you can see in your report, Jim Buffum from the EFPR group in Rochester came to do our internal audit, and he was doing the system to track and account for children, the STAC process, and he found us to be doing a good job. There was one recommendation which we will take care of, but on the whole, things were good.
Thank you, Daryl. Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that just, through the review process of RFPs, we had a chance to vet 3 firms, and you'll find in the new business that, we have the recommendation of retaining our current auditors.
Okay, thank you. All right. Moving on to Community Relations Committee, which met on the 17th.
Yes. So, just to pull out highlights, we debriefed the budget vote, the turnout, and how many, there were hundreds of views of the YouTube live stream. So we suggested maintaining that for future budget counts, and obviously for the board meetings right now, and possibly for board meetings going forward, even when we do meet in person, just so more people can access our meetings. And we talked about some of the recent racial equity and equality discussions and how to respond to some of the communications we've received from the community since that time. We have put out, I think, some great information to the community. And so I think that's a continuing conversation. The article and the letter from Dr. Tice. So I think that is something that I'm hoping we will talk about as a full board when we meet for our retreat. I believe it'll be in August, to talk about how to be an anti-racist and discuss that book, but also kind of how to move that conversation forward this year.
Rebecca, you sent out that link to the anti-racist web event. I did call the library to see if they will have a recording for it, and they haven't gotten back to me yet, but I am checking on that because we have our board meeting at the same time, but I am checking to see if there'll be a recording.
Yeah, I just thought the timing was good, but not great because it conflicts with our meeting. So that would be ideal. And we also talked about website articles and if there was a way, just because we've been putting out so much content, or we, especially in the spring, how we could sort of prioritize certain articles or keep them highlighted on the website as opposed to sort of getting buried in the archive. So that, I think, discussion will continue in future meetings. And lastly, we talked about the 12-month calendar. And as you know, that is going to print and being sent out to families this year, but we are really thinking about a new format and what that'll look like for many reasons, one of which is the uncertainty of this current school year, but also just to kind of freshen up and rethink what families want and need, and how they want to hear from our district, possibly on a more frequent basis than just annually. And as a lot of people have pointed out, the calendar, even in a stable, normal year, things move around a lot. And so those calendars can become obsolete. So no decisions have been made, but it's just a discussion that will continue on into this year in terms of what we want that to look like. Anyone else from the committee want to add in? I think that covered it.
Okay. Next is facilities, which met on the 25th of June. Dan?
We actually have met twice since our last board meeting. We met on June 25th and we met again on July 9th.
Oh, okay, there you are.
So we have the minutes are available for the 25th, not yet for the July 9th meeting. We've been on a series of trying to do these bi-weekly for two reasons. One is not only obviously there's a massive construction project currently underway, but this working diligently with the administrative team on putting together a long-range plan, starting with a next referendum plan, and diving deeper into the needs and wants lists, primarily focusing on the high school, on Eagle Hill, and on Enders Road. And so we've had the last two meetings were focused with the architects in going through those needs and wants lists and some very, very rough cost estimates, not knowing what scope is. The one thing that's missing from the July 25 minutes that I want to make sure is really clear is that we've been very specific in all of these meetings that we have tremendous infrastructure needs that are remaining in this district, but that the bulk of these projects are going to be driven by programmatic need. And so that's really been the primary focus. And so the next steps on this, we're breaking down those individual building lists to have meetings specifically with each of the individual building principals to gain their assistance in prioritization of these needs and wants, understanding that some of the needs, HVAC, boilers, et cetera, are hard things that don't necessarily have options to them other than what type of HVAC system, but that there's certain definitive infrastructure needs that are then going to be worked on to see how best they complement with programmatic needs and priorities within the buildings. So we've made some really, really good progress on that over the last several meetings and trying to put back together this long range plan that's been absent for a while now for reasons I think we're all aware of at this point, but trying to get that back on track. And we've made some really good progress with that. So that's where we're at with that currently.
One of the things that the governor has been talking about is the ventilation systems in schools and air filters, et cetera. Is that something that I'm not sure exactly when that guidance came out from the governor, probably before your last meeting, but is that something, Bill, that you've been discussing internally or the facilities committee has been discussing?
Yeah, we have discussed it internally. Back when the CDC released guidance, they had recommended that we go to what's called a MERV 13 filter. In the past, we used MERV 8, sometimes MERV 9. Wherever we can use MERV 13, we will be using that going forward. If not, we will be using MERV 11, which is also the filters that the governor recently, as of last week, recommended that malls and other large buildings be using, at the very least, MERV 11 and possibly MERV 13. So we were kind of ahead of that curve before the governor came out with that, because we were basing it on the CDC guidance that we received a while ago.
Okay, that's good.
And those have been ordered and are en route.
I just have a related question on that to do with windows. Do most of the windows in our building open? And yeah, do they open in the classrooms and the offices?
I believe that they all do, but we can double check just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that, I know the new ones that we just recently installed at Mott Road have screens, which is always helpful to keep, any insects out. But we can double check and take an inventory of everything to see that all of our classrooms have the best air possible.
Thanks.
I think on that point, and we hadn't gotten to it, this was, last school year, we did a whole district-wide survey, excuse me, on doors and door latches and making sure everything was working. I think it really goes without saying that we need to make, the windows are supposed to be openable for, emergency exiting in any case, but we certainly know people aren't going out third floor windows in most instances. But I think it would be helpful if Russ or his team or somebody could really take a class by class inventory and make sure that there's adequate window functionality in each classroom. And if there are any that need attention over this summer, to make sure they're either fully functional or easier to open. Like with the Mott Road ones, we know there was a defect and it made some of them very difficult to open for some of the teachers, and that was addressed. But I would just hope that could get addressed district-wide over the remaining balance of the summer, so that we can be bringing in as much fresh air as we might need to be bringing in.
Do I have it remember correctly, but aren't there some classrooms in the basement at Wellwood that don't have windows? I thought there were some music rooms, I can't recall, that don't have windows. Is that, Wellwood folks, is that accurate?
They wouldn't be used this coming year because they're part of the construction.
All right, so all those rooms are taken care of. All right. The only other thing I could think of with facilities is, and it's a little early, but our annual facilities tour may look a lot different depending on what circumstances we're under come the end of August, early September. So that's just something to keep in mind. We're used to all getting on the big yellow bus and going around together looking at different projects in the district, and we'll just have to wait and see how that would look in the fall. All right, next up we have the Finance Committee. Mark?
So nothing really new with finance, other than, again, congratulations to everybody on the passage of our budget. The statistics showed we did really well, and I think that is a testament to everybody's hard work, and we'll see what kind of challenges we have in the coming year.
Well, Mark's on that subject. I think we owe Sarah Gridley many, many kudos. What a huge job she undertook. That was amazing. Well done.
Congrats.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, the Policy Committee. Elena?
Yes, we most recently met June 16th. We did go through, and as the minutes do state, that we reviewed, when we would send policies to legal counsel for vetting, and agreed that obviously we should wait until all the review has been done, so that we're not sending the same policies back for multiple opinions, just so that we could be obviously cost effective with that. We went through and removed the policies that we discussed at our June 15th board meeting, one of which was 5661 wellness. We did decide that we would get the NISBA version of that, and then have that go to the wellness committee, and then explained to the committee how we would like their recommendations to be perhaps worked into an administrative regulation. The other was 7280, which spoke to standardized testing. That needs to be further revised. 7221 was in regard to graduation ceremonies. Ray is going to be reviewing that. And then Mary, I believe, had one to review on religious expression, and that was 8360. So those will all at some point be coming back to the policy committee and then to the board. And then everything else is really self-explanatory in the minutes. I don't want to have to go through and read each section, so that if anybody else does have any questions on the 4,000 or 5,000 series, I would be more than happy to answer those.
Are there any
That's it.
Are there any questions for Elena? Okay. And I believe we're not going to have any updates as far as Education Foundation, legislative liaisons. We did talk a bit about the possibility of the board doing some advocacy for athletics in the fall. Sherry, I see your hand up. Hands up.
We did receive, well, FMEF, the Education Foundation did meet. They just a summary of the year, basically. To refer back to the community relations, we had the Education Foundation meeting right after that community relations committee met and talked about options for the district calendar. And one option that came up at community relations was that the FMEF could print a district calendar and use it as a fundraiser. So we brought that option to them. I think it was Dr. Tice's idea, but we brought that option to them, and that's something that they are willing to discuss. So that was one thing that, you know, is, as Rebecca said, it's in the works for the year, but that's an option there. And then going along, moving on to the legislative liaison, I received an email today with the deadline this Friday if we want to submit any resolutions for the October general meeting for NISBA to advocate for. We have not as a board discussed advocating to NISBA for anything, but if there is something we wanted to as a board, it is due, the resolution would be due on Friday.
And that NISBA will be a virtual meeting this year. Did everybody catch that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the fall conference will be virtual, and that will include an annual business meeting that's virtual. So we'll still be able to participate in that. So that's good. All right. Thank you, Sherry. Sorry about that. I didn't realize you had items. Hall of Distinction, just because I don't want to assume there's nothing there. Are we still the same there? Okay. And unfortunately, since there were not student elections this spring, we currently will not have a student board member. Hopefully when the kids get back into school in the fall, they'll be able to have those student elections. And so we'll be able to get someone, a student in that role, as the voters did approve that position continuing on the Board of Education moving forward for the next 2 years. All right. 7.01 under new business.
Can I just ask a question on that? Because maybe I'm not clear on that. So I know in some instances, or perhaps all of them to this point, that it was the elected class president, but is that a requirement of this? Or is this a situation where Ray and his staff may be able to recommend or designate somebody that would be filling that role, so that we have a continuing student voice, especially through these meetings as we're coming to talking about, you know, what would school look like? I would really welcome that voice in those discussions.
I agree. And just to be clear, that wasn't that was coming from the high school, that we would not have one for the immediate future. So that wasn't the board making that. Yes,
I'm
Daryl.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I understood that Lucy Fowler had been elected. So
I have, that's not, what's that?
I may be misinformed, but.
To serve on the board, you mean? To be the board rep? Okay, well, that may be some breaking news right there, Daryl. we'll have to reach out to the high school to confirm that. The last news that I had was that they were not going to make that appointment at this time, pending those student elections. But if this young lady has been selected, well, then that's fantastic. You know how much I really enjoy having a student on the board.
I
So
know.
hopefully I'll keep my fingers crossed for that.
I'll check my sources.
You always have really good sources, Daryl. So.
How much?
All right, so we'll check on that. All right, now item 7.01, approval of the minutes for the June 1st, 2020 special meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Kelly. A second from Daryl. Any discussion of the minutes? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining?
Since I wasn't on the board, I'm going to abstain for the next 3.
All right,
How's that?
Jason. Sounds good. All right. Next, item 7.02, approval of the minutes for the Monday, June 8th, 2020 special meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Sherry. Second from Rebecca. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining?
Any,
So we'll have 2 abstentions, Elena and Jason.
And
Daryl. I'm sorry, and Dan.
yes.
All right. Next, item 7.03, approval of the Monday, June 15th, 2020 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Dan, second from Sherry. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
oh, no opposed.
Jason's abstaining on those. Item 7.04, approval of the minutes for the Friday, June 19th, 2020 special meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Rebecca. Second from Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? 1 abstention from Jason.
Yep.
All right. Item 7.05, policy services. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby approve a transition to New York State School Boards Association policy services at a cost of $10,000? Motion from Dan, second from Kelly. Discussion. Dan, is that your hand still up from motion?
I just want to share for everybody, just in terms of this decision that was made, just a little perspective. When we did the general counsel interviews with 3 different firms, this was a point of discussion in that. 2 of the 3 firms that interviewed expressed very strong preferences for the NYSBA policy manual and the less is more theory. And the 3rd expressed a neutral view on that. And one of the firms went so far as to say that they were very concerned with the other service in that they've found that some of the content of that was not consistent with current law. So I think what we heard in those interviews fully supports the decision that we've made as a board to move forward with going back to the less is more and the NYSBA policy manual in this process. So I just wanted to share that so that everybody understood and was aware of what we learned in those interviews on that topic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 7.05, policy services? Okay, so we have a first and a second. We've had discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda, item 7.06, personnel actions. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius School District approve the following personnel actions as recommended by the superintendent? Daryl, first motion, second from Jason. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposing or abstaining? Right. Your first motion there, Jason. We don't have a prize or a special gift or anything for that. It's just noted.
I don't get a ribbon? Okay.
You don't get a ribbon, sorry. Okay, item 7.07, results of the vote. Is there a motion the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District accept the results of the vote held on June 16th, 2020? Thank you, Sherry. Second from Dan. Discussion?
I just think it's really important at this point of this to express a gratitude to the community for their continued support for everything that this district needs to support our students. And that vote on the budget side of that was an overwhelming affirmation of this community's continued support for our students.
Well said. Any other comments on the board? On the vote, June 16th vote? Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Great. Next on the agenda, item 7.08, bus bond resolution. Is there a motion that the Fayetteville-Manlius School District hereby approve the bus bond resolution as presented? Thank you, Sherry. Second from Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda, item 7.09, the Health and Welfare Services contract. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District authorize the board president, district clerk, and superintendent to sign the contract for health and welfare services provided by East Syracuse Manoa Central School District for the 2019-20 school year?
Moved.
Thank you, Elena. Second from Sherry. Discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Item 7.10. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District authorize the board president and district clerk to sign the contract for health and welfare services provided by the East Decoite Central School District for the 2019-20 school year? Thank you, Sherry. And second from Daryl. Should that also say superintendent?
I can grab the file.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm just, the other one said superintendent and this one doesn't say superintendent. That's why I asked the question. So I just.
So the agreement does, and it has a single line for approval of superintendent, ironically, which appears to be the other district's superintendent, not have a signature line to it for our superintendent, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, this is an invoice from East Decoite.
The motion is correct as written. The documentation required.
Is anyone else getting a very odd sound right now? Okay, all right.
It's Darth Vader.
Okay, not just me. All right. I think I heard you say the motion is written correctly, Sarah?
That is correct.
Okay,
You're coming in, you're getting a lot of like, you're distorted.
The audio coming out of the DO is not working right now.
How about now? Is it better?
No. Dr. Tice, can you try speaking? Do you have audio? Oh, wait, someone's coming. Sarah?
Sarah?
Boy, great.
This is my audio.
Bill, can you say something?
Yes, but I'm not in the conference room.
Right, so your audio is perfect.
All right, so let's try again. Sarah? Oh, she's connecting. There we go.
How about now?
Perfect. There we go.
The
Okay.
motion is correct as written.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we had a first and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please indicate, raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda, item 7.11, policies in second reading. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby approves the following policies in second reading? 7230 revised, 8120 rescind, and 8470 revised. Thank you, Dan. Second from Sherry. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Item 7.12, policy cycle review 3000 series. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby acknowledges the review of the 3000 series policies completed by the Policy Committee and hereby approves the following policies in second reading? 3111 revised, 3140 revised, 3150 revised, 3290 revised, 3310 revised, and 3430 rescinded. Thank you, Elena. Second from Sherry. Any discussion?
Can I
Yeah.
just from an agenda planning perspective, can we please try to go back on these to make it clear in the agenda which of these are first readings and second readings? I think that would be more clear for everybody with that.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next, item 7.13, policy cycle review, 4000 series and 5000 series through 5322. Oops. Is there a motion that the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby acknowledges the review of the 4000 series and 5000 series through 5322 policies completed by the Policy Committee and hereby moves the following policies into second reading at the next board meeting? No change to any 4000 series policies, 5150 rescind, 5321 revision, and 5322 revision. Thank you, Kelly. Second from Dan. Any discussion? Sherry, does I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I just have in my notes from our policy committee that we should make sure that alert everybody to read 4310 and 4320 before we approve it at the next meeting. Just, we, instead of just a broad, okay, all the 4000s look good, alert those as the superintendent roles and responsibilities, I think.
Say it again, Sherry. 4310.
Yep, and 4320.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we had, sorry, motion, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just had a question on this one, and it may just have been a simple oversight, but on the 53 series through 5322, my notes from our last policy committee meeting was that 5310 was going to come before the board, not for any changes or anything, but for bond level approvals by the board. And it's not on tonight's agenda, so I think we need to make sure that that's on a next meeting agenda.
5310, Dan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, so we had a first and a second on 7.13. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, item 7.14. Is there a motion that the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby approve the donation of a 24x24 pavilion valued at $39,000, including the construction of the concrete pad, pavilion structure, structure and installation by the Eagle Hill HSA to Eagle Hill Middle School. Thank you, Elena. Second from Dan. Any discussion?
So we had some emails about this earlier today, and Dr. Tice indicated that it would be wise to have some discussion on this. And obviously this is kudos to the HSA for raising the money, kudos for being able to provide the facility to the middle school, and it's wonderful and we should be grateful for it. But just my concern, as I had expressed earlier today, was how and where we're going to land with this during construction in terms of liability insurance, particularly contractor liability insurance. If they are handling all of the construction and then donating the final result to the district, I just want to make sure that we have clarity as to whether there's insurance on it and which insurance is primary as between the HSA and the district. So that was the question I posed. Dr. Tice thought suggested we should have a discussion. So here we are. Let's have that.
As you could see from my earlier email, that the HSA did surrender ownership to us. So it is our pavilion. The question becomes, when does it become our pavilion? When they deliver the raw materials or when it's finally dedicated?
If I recall correctly, when the turf field was donated, I believe it became our property when it was completed, but I could be recalling that wrong. Elena, you're the only other person left from that era. What do you recall? Your sound is off.
I do believe that entire group had their own insurance.
Right, but did we retain it? But did we get the property after it? Didn't they give it to us whole and not the materials?
That's what I thought.
Okay.
My recollection on that was that they were given the rights to do the work. They did the work. They were responsible for all of the work and all of the insurance on the work. And then they donated the final product of the work when it was done. Okay. And so I'm just concerned if there's a construction project that's happening that the district is not in charge of, is not supervising. I'm just concerned about that falling on our liability end if anything were to happen. I know it's not a big project, but anything can happen even on a small project. So I just want to see some clarity on that.
I don't even recall, even with other HSAs in the past. I mean, obviously there've been several pavilions donated. Those organizations have done so much good for all our schools, between playground equipment and pavilions and many other things. I just don't remember what we did with the insurance.
Well, I think tonight we're accepting the gift of the pavilion. And I think as an administrative detail, I would leave that to Bill to look into, or Dr. Tice, or both, whatever, to look into the insurance issues as to who's covered by what and how that project will proceed.
Yeah, we can talk it through our insurance carrier and take a look at that. And Mr. Seidberg's right. This is a small project as compared to the turf field. So this may be nominal or negligible, but we'll take a look into it with our carrier. Mr. Furlong, anything I missed?
No, I'd be happy to look into that and make the call tomorrow morning.
So I guess just the other question to this is just in terms of procedure. If past practice was that we accept the donation when the project is done, is tonight more proper to authorize that it go forward and accept the donation down the road when it's done, or is moving forward with accepting something that's not yet even on site really the proper step tonight? I mean, it's a great thing. I want to see it done. I just want to make sure we do it, following the right process.
Well, don't we have to accept the donation to allow them access to the property, I would guess? And then maybe there's I think if we are accepting the donation, then it is up to, as Marissa said, the district to enter into whatever agreement needs to be entered into. Now, if that's something that has to come back to us to authorize whatever agreement needs to be set forth, or then maybe we can do that then. But I would think that we need to authorize something just so they're allowed access to, build something on our property.
And I can't imagine that they don't carry their own insurance on their employees.
Okay.
So can we go
So
forward?
I suggest we go forth accepting the donation, and then we get a report back from the superintendent as far as the insurance and how that's all being handled. That's the detailed work of the administration to do, and that we accept the donation this evening with deep gratitude to this HSA. Our HSAs are amazing, aren't they? I remember selling candy as a kid. My school's never raised this much money. All right, so we had a first and a second. We've had some good discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, and I will get a nice formal thank you out to the HSA now that we formally have accepted their donation. All right, item, excuse me, 7.15. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby approve the 2019-2020 Internal Audit Corrective Action Plan? Mark, and a second from Daryl. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda, 7.16. Is there a motion that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District approve the contract with King & King Architects for the capital transfer projects in the amount of $9,200? Dan, and second from Rebecca. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Next on the agenda, item 7.17. Is there a motion that the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby grants a temporary easement on tax map parcel 0.7, oh my goodness, negative 16, I'm not sure how to read those coordinates. At the coordinates 0.17.-16.-18, I'm sure I read that incorrectly, in order to provide electrical service to the modular classrooms at Wellwood Middle School. Thank you, Elena. Second from Jason. Any discussion of the easement? Dan?
Oh, obviously it's needed. I just have a question on technicality. The resolution is to grant a temporary easement, and the easement itself, the language of that is to grant a perpetual easement. So it doesn't say anything about temporary in the easement document, at least that I saw. So are we granting a temporary or are we granting a permanent easement?
You said it says permanent, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, in section 1, right underneath section 1, it says perpetual easement.
Perpetual, okay.
Do we need to amend the motion to grant a perpetual easement? Or do we need to amend the resolution to say temporary? Which one do we need to do?
I don't know why it would be perpetual if the modulars are going to be removed. So, I mean, I think the intent, if I understand it through the process, has been a temporary, but it's just not tracking accurately between the resolution and the actual grant of easement.
So the language in the, in the resolution can be, or there can be changed to read temporary. With that, is that an easy fix to make?
No, that is what it says now. Right now, the resolution says temporary. The grant of easement says perpetual.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant in the document to change it to say temporary.
I think if it's temporary, then it's missing terms as to how long until when, or how does it cease. So I just think we need some. I didn't pick up on that till about 2 hours ago, so I wasn't going to burden somebody with it then. But I'm not sure what the right resolution is on that. Bill, I assume the intent here is temporary to get power to temporary modulars, and there's going to be no need once we remove those.
That is correct. This is only intended to be a temporary situation.
So I would be reluctant to sign off then on a perpetual easement that we can't do away with down the road if it's only intended to be temporary. But I also obviously don't want to do anything that's going to hold up electrical install to these modulars that could jeopardize scheduling.
So can we pass it on condition that National Grid gives us a corrected document?
Yep.
Right, because we are approving a temporary easement. We're not approving the actual, we could
Right.
just approve the, without the document, or not approving the documents per se.
That would work.
And legally, that would be fine, that the easement says perpetual and our resolution says temporary. I just want to make sure that one is not binding greater than the other.
Well, I think if the resolution is to approve a temporary easement, then nobody on behalf of the district would have the authority to sign a
Correct.
perpetual easement, and then the grant of easement would need to be amended to bring it in line with the adopted resolution. So if that's the case, we don't need to change the resolution, but the document just can't be signed until it's revised.
Right.
Correct.
They probably hand out more permanent ones than temporary ones.
Yes.
All right, so we've had a first and a second, and thank you for catching that, Dan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Raising your hand, aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Next on the agenda, we are on 8.01 board development, and we have our upcoming retreat at the end of July, and we will see what we will do in the fall with an August, September retreat. Working agenda items. Let's see, anything right. Well, obviously the opening plans, that's a working agenda item. Reopening plans, I should say. Anyone else, anything else what you want put under working agenda items?
Can I just ask where we landed on something that was temporarily tabled at our last meeting? At our last meeting, so I would have assumed it would have been as a working item was we had the discussion about the 2 farm leases, and those were going back to legal. Just curious what the status is or where those landed.
I'd be happy to chime in on that. You know, as you had pointed out last meeting, the previous agreement was for a 5-year term. So there really was no need for any additional board action. Historically, this board has acted each year, but once again, it was a 5-year agreement, so there really is no board action needed. We did contact the 2 entities that lease our land and let them know the only requirement is that they would need to supply updated insurance or proof of insurance.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think I can move on to 8.03, potential considerations for future meetings and contingency plans, and looking at district diversity issues. All things that we'll be discussing at upcoming meetings and the retreat, future Board of Education meetings. Again, we'll have to see what happens come August, September, as far as scheduling that facilities tour and what that may look like. Did anyone have anything else? I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Ask kind of potential considerations. So just in terms of tracking things so they don't fall off, when I was going back through the minutes of our June meeting, we had the public hearing on the code of conduct, and then we had the approval of the code of conduct. But I know Kelly had specifically spoken to and asked whether we could carve out some review of this code of conduct in terms of some restorative justice procedures or practices. And we also had a discussion in the last academic year about whether there were components of the disciplinary provisions of the code of conduct that we might revisit at a board as a board. So I just want to make sure that's marked somewhere on here so that that doesn't fall off by the wayside if the board does choose to follow up on those two requests.
Why don't we put those back under or list those under potential or working agenda items? And then as we are looking at the agendas for the upcoming year, we'll find a home for those, that those items are discussed by the board.
Be happy to do that.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, dates to remember. I missed when we had dates to remember different events that we could go to. All right, so item, make sure I get this right. 10.01, which I believe I'm going back up to, which was previously 4.02, correct? The clerk and treasurer's report. Is there a motion to approve the clerk and treasurer report for May 2020 as presented? Thank you, Rebecca. Second from Sherry. Discussion? Ellen, you had a question?
I did. And, you know, Bill, it was really just if you could just refresh my memory and maybe all of our memories on the clerk's report. I mean, I understand that modifications were made to the accounting codes. So I guess I would like to know when this report would become available and when those modifications were made. You know, I'm just wondering why it wasn't done toward the end of the year, just so that we could finish off the year with our clerk's reports. You're muted.
Sorry about that. There was a memo provided to the full board, given the rationale behind that. If you recall, the whole purpose for restructuring the chart of accounts was to come into compliance with what was issued by the comptroller's office. There are a few accounts that have been historically used by this district that weren't necessarily the accounts that the comptroller's office had outlined, and vice versa. The issue is that now with the transparency reporting, where we have to break down our budget by building, and where we have to break down our actual year-end numbers, the actual financial reports by building, we really need to bring those in compliance. So the report that you reference is a report that is a standalone report specific to Fayetteville-Manlius, by the way. I have not seen that in other districts. That report is basically hand created. It's not a canned report. It's not a report that comes from the financial system where you just press print and it comes out. You know, in terms of recreating that report, we plan on doing so. You know, with board meetings being fairly early in the month, we don't have time to really close the month out. But what we've been working on within the business office is restructuring those accounts so that they were up and running for July 1st. So, you know, these reports are from the end of May. When we get to the end of June, you will have the updated report, and we will generate that for both May and June.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on item 10.01, the clerk and treasurer's report for May? So we had a first and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Item 10.02, which is now the RFP award for legal services. Oops. Is there a motion that the board hereby accept the proposals for legal services from Trespat and Marquette LLP for bond counsel, Farrar Forenza for general counsel, and tax services? Is there a motion to approve? Thank you, Kelly. Second from Daryl. Discussion?
Yeah, so I just had two things that I just wanted to bring up in the context of this. I wasn't really quite sure exactly where these belonged, so it seemed to fit here. One is on the general counsel selection, which was a consensus selection of everybody that was on the interview panel of that. I just wanted it reflected somewhere in the minutes on this that we have Bill's memo on it, but as I understood it, one of the primary considerations for the selection was consistency in this very inconsistent time, that there wasn't really cause or reason to be making changes when we have so many other challenges that we're in the midst of. And so I think just the reason I bring that up is we do these RFPs on a multi-year cycle. But if that was one of the primary considerations, and it was from my recollection of that discussion, that I do wonder if that should be put on an earlier repeat cycle, when hopefully we're past this pandemic and back into more normal times. But the second issue with this is on all of the legal services. And, I know we've had this discussion before, but I just want to revisit it. And it's just on this issue of transparency. So as I understand it, we've spent or encumbered $120,000 so far on the just ended academic year. And in all of if to my recollection, in all of the general counsel interviews that we had, everybody reaffirmed in those that the Board of Education is who general counsel represents. And we still have this ongoing situation of we are the client, we're represented by counsel, but we as a board really know almost nothing about what general counsel is doing, what our attorneys are doing. And I don't know what $120,000 has been spent on. I don't know what time has been spent. I don't know what they're representing us in on a month-to-month basis. And I'm really not comfortable with it. And it's really not very consistent with my understanding or belief as to our oversight responsibilities. So I'd like to find a way that we are updated at least regularly on what exactly counsel is doing for us as the client. And obviously we've had some discussions on it before. It doesn't need to be specific in most instances, but I do think from an oversight perspective that we should have some regular reporting as to what exactly counsel is doing for us as the client. So I just wanted to raise that again.
Yep.
To be the point for that.
To Dan's point, what might be helpful is if we got some general breakdown of categories. I know that, special services may be an area that we have X amount of legal services in. We may different categories instead of, I personally am not interested in going through each individual bill, as I wouldn't want to go through each itemized bill for other services that the district has. But I do think it would be helpful to have broad categories so that we know, the pie of it, the pie chart, and showing what categories legal services are being spent on without getting into the weeds of individual, calls and bills and that sort of thing. Is that what you're looking for, Dan? More of a broad perspective or of what the legal bills are for?
Well, I certainly think at a minimum, I think I'd want to see what that looks like to see how informative that is. But I do think we should be having something that is informative to us other than just end of the year. All right, well, we know from internal discussions that, these three particular things that were worked on, but have no idea what else was worked on that led to this expenditure. I mean, the budget line for this past year was $163,000 on that. And we really have very little insight into that at this point. And so whether we start a little bit more general and then see if that becomes informative or not, I think, we can work in that direction, but I'm not comfortable with the void of information that we have currently on that.
So I had a thought, if our claims auditor does work for the board, perhaps we could charge that person with providing a little more detail and providing us with a breakdown of what those bills are, as this individual is charged with auditing the claims for the contract.
Right. If she indicates there are any areas that are of concern?
Well, we could simply request that she provide us with a little more detail on, a particular item that we feel we want more information on throughout the year.
So is the board then in agreement that we could start by these broad categories? Because again, I know that a lot of these calls are probably, or likely, based on my prior experience, contain a lot of student information, et cetera. So would the board be comfortable with us getting categories of what the legal services are being, the funds are being used for. So the expense report will be broken down into this amount is spent on special services, this amount is spent on personnel, et cetera, et cetera. And we could start that maybe quarterly.
I think to me that would be helpful. I mean, I know a fair amount of general counsel time is spent on policy review, for example. I think it would be helpful to me at least to know, okay, well, this is the dollar amount and time that was spent on policy review. This is the amount that was spent on student matters. This is the amount that was spent on construction contracts and related facilities contracts. And this is the amount that was spent on administrative matters. You know, whatever though, I think those are broad enough categories that we can get a better understanding from an oversight perspective on what these funds are being spent on.
Okay, is everybody good with that?
Just speaking for myself, I don't really need any of that information. If you think it's important, I guess we could look at categories, but I mean, we know that legal consultation is expensive. So I don't have any concern about how our district's spending it.
Now the issue, I mean, Dan's brought it up a couple of times, and I think other people are have chimed in as well that they would be interested in just knowing more about that particular category. So I think it's good because we are supposed to stay at that 20,000 foot perspective. We start broad, and if we are, you know, or even look for patterns. I mean, if we're spending a lot of legal amount on a certain area of legal services, is there something we want to look at from a policy perspective? So I think starting broad and seeing if there is an issue for concern or area for concern may be our best approach to that. Is everyone in agreement with that? Waiting for some nods.
Yeah, sure. Marissa, I think that's fine. I'm comfortable if the claims auditor is going to do it. There's no reason she couldn't put something together monthly for us and just include it. A simple pie chart, to Dan's point, 6-7 categories would be fine.
So it's monthly versus, I said quarterly because I think you'll get a better idea over 3 months versus each month. Or what is the board's thought on that? Quarterly versus monthly. I thought quarterly might be the better approach to start with.
I'm fine on quarterly.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay.
If our claims auditor is going to undertake this task, then it might be easier for her if it was done monthly, because she does all her reporting on a monthly basis.
Well, let's check with her and see if it's okay if we do it quarterly. She may be perfectly fine with that, especially if that's the way the board's preference is.
I mean, I guess just the question, I just don't want to pigeonhole on that is that really the right role or task for our claims auditor, or is there somebody else on the business office side that would be more appropriate to do that? I don't know that. I just asked that, Bill, if there's
yeah, you know, personally, I think it's financial reporting that the board has asked for. I have no problem with the business office providing that. You know, I think it's a little bit unusual for a claims auditor to do that. But, you know, whatever the board, you know, wishes to do is fine with me.
Perhaps you can do that. You can put that report together and then provide it to the finance committee, because the finance committee is meeting quarterly now, if I recall correctly. Maybe
had been, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that would be the right avenue to, you know, have that initial discussion about that particular report.
And I think that's fine, but I think that when the report is released, it should go to everybody, whether or
Oh,
not.
absolutely, right. It's part of the minutes for the meeting.
Well,
actually, it may be confidential, so
no,
maybe executive session.
I think that even when the report is disseminated, it should go to every board member. If the decision is going to be that it will be discussed in the finance committee, that's one thing. But I think that once it gets distributed, everybody should be getting it at the same time, in my opinion.
I'm fine with that. We're good. All right, so there will be a quarterly summary of legal services. We'll start that in September, and that will be sent to everyone and be on the agenda for the finance committee meeting. Okay, so we had a first and a second to approve the legal counsel RFPs. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor, please raise your hand to indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right. And now I'm going back to what was item 5.01. I believe that's 10.03. Now, am I correct, Sarah?
Sure, we can do it that way.
All right, 10.03 appointments. Is there a motion that the Fayetteville-Manlius School District make the following appointments as presented? Thank you, Kelly. Second from Rebecca. Any discussion of the appointments? All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Going back down again. So we do not have anything for executive session this evening. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Mark. Second from Rebecca. Any discussion?
The fastest reorg meeting?
I'm sorry, what?
Is this the fastest reorg meeting that we've had in the last 5 years?
Well, it's 2020, Dandy. They're going to be different.
Last year was 2 hours. I think Jason slowed us down by 10 minutes this year. So.
Okay, Jason.
So,
There is,
yeah.
you do have to get us all ribbons for that. So. Okay, so I had a first and a second to adjourn the meeting. No further discussion, I'm seeing. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, good night, folks. See you on Monday. Don't forget to get those questions in.
Be
Thank
safe.
you.